meant that she had been happy and prosperous. And he also loved to look at Sun Cloud, who possessed all of that rare wildflower beauty sometimes given to the northern Crees. And it did him good to look at Slim Buck. He was a splendid mate and a royal father, and Jolly Roger found himself strangely happy in their happiness. In the eyes of men and women and little children he saw that happiness all about him. For 3 winters there had been splendid trapping, Slim Buck told him, and this season they had caught and dried enough fish to carry them through the following winter, even if black days should come. His people were rich. They had many warm blankets and good clothes, and the best of teepees and guns and sledges, and several treasures besides. 2 of these Yellow Bird and her husband disclosed to Jolly Roger this first night. One of them was a sewing machine, and the other a phonograph. And Jolly Roger listened to Mother Machree and The Rosary that night as he sat by Wollaston Lake with 600 miles of wilderness between him and Cragg's Ridge. Later, when the camp slept, Yellow Bird and Slim Buck and Jolly Roger still sat beside the red embers of their fire, and Jolly Roger told of what had happened down at the edge of civilization. It was what his heart needed, and he left out none of the details. Slim Buck was listening, but Jolly Roger knew he was talking straight at Yellow Bird, and that her warm heart was full of understanding. Softly, in that low Cree voice which is the sweetest of all voices, she asked him many questions about Nada, and gently her slim fingers caressed the tress of Nada's hair, which he let her take in her hands. And after a long time she said, "I have given her a name. She is Oomie, the pigeon." Slim Buck started at the strange note in her voice. "The pigeon," he repeated. "Yes, Oomie, the pigeon," Yellow Bird nodded. She was not looking at them. In the firelight her eyes were glowing pools. Her body had grown a little tense. Without asking Jolly Roger's permission, she placed the tress of Nada's hair in her bosom. "Oomie, the pigeon," she said again, looking far away. "That is her name, because the pigeon flies fast and straight and true. Over forests and lakes and worlds the pigeon flies. It is tireless. It is swift. It always flies home." Slim Buck rose quietly to his feet. "Come," he whispered, looking at Jolly Roger. Yellow Bird did not look at them or speak to them, and Slim Buck, with his hand on Jolly Roger's arm, pulled him gently away. In his eyes was a little something of fear, and yet along with it a sublime faith. "Her spirit will be with Oomie, the pigeon, tonight," he said in a voice struck with awe. "It will go to this place which you have described, and it will live in the body of the girl, and through Yellow Bird it will tell you tomorrow what has happened and what is going to happen." In the edge of the shore willows Jolly Roger stood for a time, watching Yellow Bird as she sat under the stars, motionless as a figure graven out of stone. He felt a curious tingling at his heart, something stirring uneasily in his breast, and he stood alone even after Slim Buck had stretched himself out in the soft sand to sleep. He was not superstitious, yet it was equally a part of his philosophy and his creed to believe in the overwhelming power of the mind. "If you have faith enough, and think hard enough, you can think anything until it comes true," he had told himself more than once. And he knew Yellow Bird possessed that illimitable faith, and that behind her divination lay generations and centuries of an unbreakable certainty in the power of mind over matter. He realized his own limitations, But a mysterious voice in the still night seemed whispering to him that in the crude wisdom of Yellow Bird's brain lay the secret to strange achievement, and that on this night her mind might perform for him what he, in his greater wisdom, would call a miracle. He had seen things like that happen. And he sat down in the sand, sleepless, and with Peter at his feet, waited for Yellow Bird to stir. He could see the dull shimmer of starlight in her hair, but the rest of her was a shadow that gave no sign of life. The camp was asleep. Even the dogs were buried in their wallows of sand, and the last red spark of the fires had died out. The hour passed, and another hour followed, and the lids of Jolly Roger's eyes grew heavier as the fading stars seemed to be sinking deeper into infinity. At last he slept, with his back leaning against a sand dune the children had made. He dreamed, and was flying through the air with Yellow Bird. She was traveling swift and straight, like an arrow, and he had difficulty in keeping up with her, and at last he cried out for her to wait, that he could not go farther. The cry roused him. He opened his eyes, and found cool gray dawn in the sky. Peter, alert, was muzzling his hand. Slim Buck lay in the sand, still asleep. There was no stir in the camp. And then, with a sudden catch in his breath, he looked toward Yellow Bird's tepee. Yellow Bird still sat in the sand. Through the hours of fading starlight and coming dawn she had not moved. Slowly McKay rose to his feet. When he came to her, making no sound, she looked up. The shimmer of glistening dew was in her hair. Her long lashes were wet with it. Her face was very pale, and her eyes so large and dark that for a moment they startled him. She was tired. Exhaustion was in her slim, limp body. A sigh came from her lips, and her shoulders swayed a little. "Sit down, Neekewa," she whispered, drawing the ropes of her hair about her as if she were cold. Then she drew a slim hand over her eyes and shivered. "It is well, Neekewa," she spoke softly. "I have gone through the clouds to where lives Oomie, the pigeon. I found her crying in a trail. I whispered to her, and happiness came, and that happiness is going to live, for Neekewa and the pigeon. It cannot die. It cannot be killed. The red-coated men of the Great White Father will never destroy it. You will live. She will live. You will meet again in happiness. And happiness will follow ever after. That much I learned, Neekewa. In happiness you will meet again." "Where? When?" whispered Jolly Roger, his heart beating with sudden swiftness. Again Yellow Bird passed her hand over her eyes, and as she held it there for a moment, she bowed her head until Jolly Roger could see only her dew-wet hair, and she said, "In the country beyond, Neekewa." Her eyes were looking at him again, big, dark, and filled with mystery. "And where is this country, Yellow Bird?" he asked, a strange chill driving the warmth out of his heart. "You mean up there?" And he pointed to the gray sky above them. "No, it is happiness to come in life, not in death," said Yellow Bird slowly. "It is not beyond the stars. It is—" He waited, leaning toward her. "In the country beyond," she repeated with a tired little droop of her head. "And where that is I do not know, Neekewa. I could not pass beyond the great white cloud that shut me out. But it is somewhere. I will find it. And then I will tell you and the pigeon." She stood up and swayed in the gray light.